What's up, guys? How's it going? Cade Moore with More Muscle. So right now I'm studying, and I wanted to share something with you guys, something that I learned, and it's super important. So it's sickle cell disease, right? So let's get started. What is sickle cell disease? So we have red blood cells, and these red blood cells are circular, and they're strong, and they can carry oxygen well. Well, what happens with sickle cell disease? Your red blood cells aren't formed correctly, and they can't properly carry that oxygen. And the other thing is most of the time, red blood cells live about 120 days, and that's going to give them adequate time to carry oxygen, and eventually they'll die, and new ones will be replaced with stem cells, which that are in your bone, right? So your bone produces stem cells, and they're called reticulocytes, and they eventually become into a red blood cell. And it takes I think 3 days for them to become a strong red blood cell. But with sickle cell anemia, these cells they die in about 10 days, and so that's going to cause a lot of harm. And so what you got to be careful with sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease is it's recessive, right? So that means if you have kids with someone and they have a dominant trait, the kid won't have sickle cell anemia. And this is more prevalent in African Americans. And actually, 1 in every 365 African Americans do have sickle cell disease. So it's a recessive disease. So that means, say, for example, if you know you have a recessive trait of sickle cell anemia, you need to go talk with and you're planning on having kids, you got to go talk with someone that knows about genetics, and they can test you and make sure you guys won't have a kid that has sickle cell anemia. And the thing is with sickle cell anemia, it's an ongoing study, so people are still trying to figure out cures to it. So that's one thing, is you got to check your genetics and know it's a recessive trait. So if you're having a kid and they have a dominant trait of non-sickle cell disease, your kid will not have sickle cell, but they will be a carrier of sickle cell. So this is just a little interesting, but it's important because when your body has low oxygen, you got to be careful for crises, right? So what can happen with a crisis is when your oxygen gets too low and your body can't handle it, right? And so your vital organs such as your lungs, your kidneys, they start to shut down, and it can cause actually death. So what do you do if you have sickle cell disease? What are the things you can do? Well, one is you need to be drinking adequate water. So 2 to 3 liters. You got to be drinking adequate water because your body can, form new red blood cells, because those things are dying off every 10 days, and they're not, created correctly. So you're gonna need to your body's gonna need to be able to be at the maximum function to create new red blood cells. And obviously they aren't gonna be created the right way, but having these, having adequate water, having adequate iron. So what does iron do, guys? When your red blood cell is carrying oxygen, iron is actually with that red blood cell and it's able to carry oxygen. So a lot of people with sickle cell disease, they take iron supplements. But you got to be careful with iron because it is something very strong, and if you have too much of it, it can be very, very harmful to you. And you'd have to get this thing called chelation therapy, CHELATION. So I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but it's chelation therapy where it monitors your iron and it can actually take that iron out. So obviously you don't want that to happen to you. But if you have adequate water, if you have adequate iron, that's going to help you avoid those crises where your liver and your lungs are, in serious effect, right? Where you could die. The next thing is stem cell transplants, right? That's the other thing you can do. It's a little difficult because you got to find a donor that matches your blood type and all that. And it's a little, it's hard to get stem cells, right? But those stem cells can become healthy red blood cells. And that's what we're looking for. Because then If those stem cells aren't dying off every 10 days, and they're living 120 days, and they're formed correctly, that's going to be very helpful. And so with sickle cell disease, the average age, this is kind of sad, but we're getting, with sickle cell disease, we're getting smart where we can have those people live to around 60 years old. That's the average death age of someone that has sickle cell disease. But because of new and because of learning and because of the medical field growing, we're getting those people to live longer than normal, right? Which is really good. But anyways, that's a little bit about sickle cell disease. It's genetic, so it is recessive. If you want, you can, if you know your family has it, you should definitely check with the person if you're having kids, you should definitely check, and just, to see. Sickle cell anemia is something that is hard and difficult to go through. But with, getting adequate water, adequate iron, and getting those stem cell transplants, you can do okay with it. So thanks for watching.